The rust repairs on this side are similar. The rusted out here along to the rear panel there. So that's the same as the other side. The amount that's cut out will be about the same. I'll shape this a little differently just to make it an even shape, which is easier to weld and to flange as well. Dent pullers, the holes, I don't have as many of those on this side, so the actual panel damage was limited to this area. There doesn't appear to be anything along here, which was the problem on the other side, so it's a similar repair. I've probably got to put a little bit more metal in here that's it's a bit damaged in there, so I'll replace that. So at this stage what I'm doing is trying to assess how I'm going to do those. The holes appear to be bigger, although that might be an optical illusion. The holes are actually punched through. I mean, it's interesting that normally a drill won't leave so much bent metal on the inside, but these are considerably pushed in, so I'm not sure what was used to punch those holes through. So what I'm doing at the moment is just using a dolly to try and straighten these holes out. As I say, they're probably at least a 1/16 of an inch of metal on the inside, so they're not flush at all. So I'm just trying to panel beat that out. Once I've got that, I'll then try and straighten the rest of the panel. It's a little bit dented in here. I'll see what I can do for that, and then I'll clean it up and look at welding those holes closed. I've been finishing off the panel here before I weld up the dent puller holes. I've been working on removing the remaining dents that the dent puller didn't pull out, and of course it doesn't pull most of it out. It pulls the worst of it out, I guess you could say, and the rest is just filled. I've managed to get pretty much all the crease out. There's a couple of very shallow spots I've still got to work on, but I think this is enough now to start welding up the holes, because I'll introduce a little bit of distortion when I do that. So I'll weld those up now. I've got some plugs to go in those holes, and I'll use the TIG to weld them up, and then I'll finish that panel off again. So it's not as bad as the other side, but you know, just little small dents here and there. Some of them are actually filled with lead, so maybe they were there when the car was put together. So anyway, I'll get most of it out, and in fact I've got most of it out already, and I'll weld these up and then refinish the surface, and then proceed towards I'll probably put the door in next to make sure I've got the line right, and work from there. Now there are two ways you can fill these holes. The first is just to weld up the hole. In other words, probably using a MIG. I guess you could use a TIG if you're very careful, and just add weld until you've covered the hole up. I've chosen to use the method of putting in metal discs into the hole, so it means enlarging the hole. Now these discs are around, I think it's about 0.21 of an inch in diameter. This comes out of the standard punch from the flanging tool, and what I'm doing is I'm actually enlarging the hole a little bit. Now I think that's important as well, because with the dent puller holes you tend to get a little bit of rust around the edge of the hole itself. So by drilling it out, you're actually removing any rust in the hole to start with. Now, okay, you're putting a 0.2 disc into the hole, but it means then you can run a TIG and basically fuse that disc into the surrounding metal. So I'm not really adding lots of welding wire in there. Now what that also means is, because I'm using a TIG, I'm putting less heat into the panel, and it also means that, particularly with this panel, I can get behind when it comes to planishing that welded area out. I can get behind there and use a hammer and dolly. Now if I'd used a MIG, I end up with weld on the inside of the panel. It's just unavoidable. I suppose you might be able to do it with perhaps a copper plate on the inside. That may stop it a bit, but it means that the inside surface, when I've TIGGed it, doesn't have any weld protruding, so it makes it easier to planish. It takes a lot longer. What have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes there. I end up using 10 discs because I keep dropping them on the floor, so there's a lot of mucking around and a lot of filing. So when I drill it undersized, and then with a small file gradually open the hole and trial fit these until I can get them to start to go in, and then I tap them in with a small hammer with a dolly behind it. So they're all held in place, all flush with the panel on the outside. The next thing is to TIG it and hopefully don't blow through, which is always a problem with welding anyway. So anyway, I'll now start to TIG those in, and then I'll finish off the weld. The hole's plugged up nicely, didn't get any blow-throughs, which was good, and I'll just ground that back. It's probably a little bit of fill required around some of the welds, not much, minuscule actually, but I won't do any more on that at this stage until I fit the door. I've got to fit the door and set the curve, or make sure I've got the right curve here on the repair section, and also make sure everything lines up on the door itself. So I'll just do that next, and a bit like the other side, I need to make sure that's right before I start finalising the curvature on this bottom piece here. What I'm doing at the moment is actually making sure the panels align between the door and the body. Still got a little bit of work to do. It's requires a little bit of lead up the top there, but it's fitting well all the way down to about here, or probably at least to there, and then it's just sticking out a little bit, so I've got to address that. Most of it's in the flange, so it's just going to take some time to do that. The front end, I need to do a little bit more work on that, up around the top edge here, and some around here just on the flange again. So I'll keep working on that, and I'll have to take the door off to do some of that. I may look at giving a bit more freedom in the hinge on the body, so I can just pull it out a little bit further. So I'll be doing that as well. Not worried about the gaps. The gaps are rough at the moment. They'll have to be welded. I've got at least a 5, probably close to a 6 mil gap there at the moment, and certainly the gap here would need to be closed up, but I'm not worried about that. I just want to get the body alignment perfect, so I can actually then put this panel in. It's taken me many hours to get the panel alignment right. Still got a bit of fine tuning to do on the front, but then again I haven't welded this panel in yet, so there's still a bit more work to do there, but it's very, very close. It's close up and around here. It's all right most of the length here. It's sitting out a little bit here, about 1 millimetre out, which I could easily straighten up. It's aligning here on this panel, so that's okay. The gaps, as I said before, I'm not doing the gaps at this stage. I've left enough gap at the rear, sorry, at the front. That's about the 3/16 or just under 5 mil. So that's right. Here's a little bit wider, so I'll need a bit of weld along here. May need a bit of weld along the bottom there, not all the way, but certainly on the tail end here. So it's right now to be able to shape this panel here. So I've got the curve of the door right down to here. Now I can put the repair section in and I'll start to shape that. So it's taken a long time, but it's better to get it as close as I can before I weld this panel in. May need a little bit of lead on this, so I'm worried about that, but the panels will be should be aligned right along the edge here, so shouldn't need anything in there. But anyway, I'm about to start the fitting this panel. I'll use my own repair section rather than the factory one. It just gives me more to work to, and if I mess that up, well, there's no problem. I can easily make another one. Now the process of shaping this repair section starts afresh. This is just the flat panel. Haven't put the fold there. Haven't put the fold here yet. What I'm going to do is just start to get the curve right. It needs to be obviously not flat along here. It curves, gentle curve around and in. So I'll start by using the shrink and stretcher to generate the curve in here. Not the curve around that way, but the curve inwards into the body. So at the moment that's not fitting against the inner guard panel, so it's not fitting against here. It's got to fit up against that, so this actually curves gradually inwards, so I've got to generate that curve in this repair section. I've been working on shaping the bottom area here to fit in with the gentle curve of the body. I've almost got that right. It's fitting the flanges quite well. A couple of places I'll need to adjust. Having spent some time shrinking parts of this flange, it's actually resulted in the top here bowing out. So I've got too much metal now in there, so I'll have to be careful and come across here and probably from there to here and start shrinking this a little bit more. Now before I do that, I may trim the panel off. It's got a lot of excess on here that I really don't need, so don't want to spend time shrinking this down when that's actually not even going to be there. So I'll probably trim the panel down a bit, probably cut a large section of the top off, the bit above the holes, not so much above that hole, but probably from there up. I'll cut that bit off, which will give me less to have to worry about shrinking. So that's the next step. It's going to take some time to get the panel right, but you actually have to spend that time to make sure that everything's going to fit and that the welding's going to be a little bit easier. So it's time well spent. But anyway, I'll start with trimming this down a bit more to the finished size, and then I'll start shrinking this top area. I've pretty well got the shape right. It's got a nice gentle curve around in there, very, very slight, and I've just been working on getting the curve to the door there. It's not quite there, but it's very, very close. So I've just got a little bit of tweaking to do on this. Probably a little bit more curve in the centre bit there. Not much. I've been getting the curve there. I get that with the shrinker. Just gradually shrinking the flange and curving that around. And once I've done that, then I've put this through the English wheel just to promote that slight curve into the panel, and then transitioning down into here. Not too much, it doesn't need much, but it's just to take it away from a flat piece of steel. The curve around here, it was also done with shrinker and stretcher, where I made mistakes. Sometimes it's a bit confusing when you're playing with the metal. You think you've got to shrink it, and actually you've got to stretch it. So some of it I've shrunk and then had to re-stretch. But anyway, it's gradually forming into the right shape. Very, very close. I haven't trimmed the flange yet. I'll do that once I've got the shape. It's much wider than it needs to be, as you can see there. At least probably 5, maybe even 8 mil too wide, but it makes it easier for me to shape. I've got more metal to work with. I haven't put the step flange in here yet. I'll wait until I've got all of this fitting correctly. I say very close. Take a few more hours to get it right. I haven't clamped it, it's just sitting there at the moment, but I've still got to play with the flanges here to get it fitting right. It's sitting up a little bit here. That's in the repair section rather than the underlying flange. I haven't flanged this bit yet. I'm waiting till I've got this curve set correctly, and then I'll fold that over. So once I've tweaked the curvature and folded that, then I'll have the panel in the correct position. I'll then screw it to the flange to make sure where the flange is going to finally sit. Then I'll do the step flange. So still a lot more work to do on this, but it's getting there quite nicely.